What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the X-Transbots Dante with the Takara Tomy masterpiece Inferno. So these figures actually came out of quite a few years apart. I was surprised when I looked. This is from 2016, 6 years ago, and this one just came out 2022. So that's a big difference, 6 years apart. But we're going to take a look at this and do the comparison. Now, they obviously took different styles and different approaches on the Inferno, but they're both masterpiece versions of Inferno. As I always mention with these comparisons, I try to be as objective as possible. Of course, there's subjectivity involved when you do comparisons like this. So I pick one and you prefer the other, then you win. I really try to do these comparisons so people can make a decision for themselves which direction they want to go with their collection. With that being said, let's get started, and we'll start off with accessories. There are all the accessories. They both come with quite a bit of stuff. So they both come with a blaster. The Takara one is, I guess it's just plastic, but they're slightly different designs here. They both come with a water effect. Although the Takara one, they should have just made it clear. It looks kind of funny with the not translucent piece here. They both come with alternate head with these kind of squared off ears. I'll just cut off one of these faces to go with it. So alternate head and face. And that one went flying. And now we're kind of down to this, so I'll sort of have to match things up. But you get an alternate ladder piece for X-Transbots, which basically has a nozzle on it, or you can have the flat one. And I'll count that with this effect piece here. So this is allows you to hold red alert. It's kind of a display piece. I find it kind of silly. They should have just made it able to actually hold the character. But there you go. And then you get these little fire effect display pieces with X-Transbots. Really nice. I'll count that off with this, which is that thing from that one episode, a little nozzle that attacked him. And he can hold this. And I'll give him credit for these two things, which I didn't even remember these, but these basically plug into his arm as a communicator. So we'll cut those off, and here's kind of what you're left with. You get two additional faces for Takara, and then you get some parts to make it more chrome, basically less toy and more, or less Toon and more toy. So we're going to give accessories over to Takara. Right, next we'll talk about the gimmicks on these two, and they are similar in some ways. So they both have the extending stabilizers that work in vehicle mode. X-Transbots actually has 4 of them, or 2 sets of 2, whereas the Takara has 1 set. They both have the extending ladder in the vehicle mode and the water effect and all that. But X-Transbots got opening doors and actually a working cockpit. So inside there you got the vehicle, the steering wheel, you got the seats there that actually fold forward. So there's a lot more going on inside the interior of the X-Transbots. So the other thing, which tiny little thing, but they've got little ladders back here that you can fold out in the vehicle mode. So I'm going to give gimmicks over to X-Transbots. I think just such a little extra touch here in the vehicle mode that makes it kind of unique. Now let's talk about the cartoon accuracy. In order to do that, we'll put the G1 image there so you can take a look for yourself. And this one is kind of a no-brainer. Takara nailed it. That's what they were going for anyway, right? Maximum cartoon accuracy, almost to a fault. I really don't like the hip skirts on this. I just think it's ugly. I mean, they do work nicely, but I just don't like the look of it. This is kind of more attractive. It does kind of look like the previous Make Toys and Ocular Max, other versions that have come out. So it's not accurate, but I do like the look of it. But either way, we're going to give cartoon accuracy over to Takara. They just nailed it here. All right, next we'll talk about the sculpt on this. And this is interesting because this depends on what you prefer in your sculpt. So this guy has a lot of sculpted detail and accents and little things going on all over the place, all throughout. This one is smooth as eggs, if you get that reference. It really has no anything. Like, it's just not meant to have any details. And a lot of people like the details, but really it's when you come to the back here, that's where you see Takara was able to get rid of the entire ladder. And that sculpt is definitely more accurate to the cartoon, but also just cleaner overall. So because of that, I'm going to give sculpt over to Takara. I do like the details on here, but I do think the sculpt is just overall cleaner on Takara. Right, next we'll look at the paint on these two guys. And when it comes to paint, this is tricky because this one actually looks like it's fully painted due to the plastic they used, but it's actually not. So the paint is really just here on these die-cast thighs, on the chest, on the doors, on the middle of the arm, on the face obviously, and then on the front of these feet. For the Takara Tomy, you've got paint pretty much 100%, obviously with the exception of the glass. Everything else is painted. I believe this white is plastic, just white plastic, but everything else you see is painted. If you do switch out, swap out for this, more realistic looking, this is also painted. So either way, we're going to have more paint on the Takara. The quality also is pretty darn good on this Inferno. I don't have any paint scraping or flaking. So we're going to give paint over to Takara. Right, next we'll talk about the build quality of these two. And this is kind of tough because they're both pretty darn good. The Takara is pretty much 100% plastic, but it's well built. It's solid, thick plastic. You don't feel like anything's going to break. It does all peg and come together nicely and, you know, feels solid. The X-Transbot has some die cast, especially in the legs. There's quite a bit of heft. The feet, the thighs, and then this midsection here all has die cast in it. So it gives you that premium feel. It does feel sturdy. It doesn't feel like it's going to break. But the only thing on the X-Transbots that doesn't feel great is these hands. And I mentioned that during my review. They're just kind of, they're weak, right? They just don't peg in nicely. The fingers themselves aren't great. So that's about the only thing I would knock them for points on build quality. But the Takara, it just feels light. It doesn't have anything to it. So I'm going to give them a tie on build quality. Neither of them have any problems, but both of them perform well and don't have any issues, so we'll give them a tie. All right, next we'll talk about the articulation. In order to do that, we'll articulate each one individually so you can see for yourself. So on the X-Transbots, the head is on a rotating swivel, so you get up to there, down to there, rotates around, no side to side on that. The nozzle here can bend back and forth. Shoulders can rotate all the way around on a ratchet. You have an in and out movement on this butterfly joint, and the shoulders go up to here on a ratchet. Rotation at the bicep. You have a double jointed elbow. As long as you bend the top one first, you can get the bottom one up for the full bend. For the hands, you have a rotation at the wrist. You have the thumb on a ball joint, and then the pointer finger is separate, and then these three fingers have a single pin. The pointer finger has a separate pin, but it's not really that useful, but it does have it. You have a rotation at the waist. No ab crunch on this guy. Continuing down, you have hip skirts that move out of the way. Legs go up to there, back to there, out to the side on a ratchet. Rotation at the thigh. Single jointed knee gets you 90 degrees. Ankle tilt out, both directions, forward and backward. For the Takara Tomy, you have the head on a ball joint. Goes up to there, down to there. You do get side to side because it's on a ball joint, and you can rotate around. You can also rotate this, which I'm going to call the neck, but the box itself can rotate as well. So if you want to get the head, you can get a little more expressiveness out of that. And you still get the same thing with the nozzle. You can rotate all the way around. For shoulders, rotate all the way around on a ratchet, out to the side on a ratchet, and you get the butterfly joint just due to the way it transforms. You can get that all the way in. A rotation at the bicep. Single jointed elbow, but it gets you well past 90 degrees, almost the full bend. You have a rotation at the waist. You do have an ab crunch on this one, so it goes up to there, then it locks back in down there. For the legs, they rotate up to there on a ratchet, back to there on a ratchet, up to the side on a ratchet. Rotation at the thigh. Single jointed knee, but it gets you almost the full bend over there. Ankle tilt. Ankle pivot, back and forth on a ratchet. Pretty nice movement there. So as I mentioned in my previous review, I've sort of changed how I'm looking at articulation. I don't look at range of motion, I'm just looking at total points of articulation. And if you look at the score up there, you'll see X-Transbots got an extra point for the neck, which I'm calling this the neck, an extra point for the ab crunch, whereas X-Transbots got one extra point for the hands. So I'm going to give articulation over to Takara Tomy. Right, next we'll talk about the transformation and engineering on these two. And this is something where Takara had some black magic here. Being able to transform this ladder away and into the vehicle is really just a marvel of engineering. I said it then, I'm going to say it now. It is really impressive they're able to do that. So definitely going to give engineering over to Takara. That's just, another level. When it comes to transformation, both of them are pretty fun, actually, which is odd for me to say. Usually X-Transbots transformations are horrible. I really don't have a lot of issue. This ladder was my main concern before I got it, but once I had it and figured out how to do it, really quite simple. But the only step that's a little bit challenging is getting the arms out from under here because there's a little bit of bending of plastic to get it out. But that's really it. So I'm going to give them a tie on transformation. Neither of them are really painful or annoying. And neither of them really have any problems other than the little thing I mentioned with the arms on the X-Transbots. Takara, there is a little bit of doing to get this backpack in, but it is just really amazing. So we'll give transformation a tie and we'll give engineering over to Takara. And there you have them both in their vehicle modes. Both pretty good looking vehicles, but some distinct differences here. So first of all, the length. X-Transbots is definitely much longer than the Takara. You can see it this much longer back here. It's also slightly taller to the top of the ladder and definitely heavier. This is about 1 pound 7 ounces. This is less than 1 pound. And also the details. There's just so much more detail on the X-Transbots and just the number of features and play features it has. I do think X-Transbots did a better job in giving us a more realistic vehicle and something that's just a lot more fun. It's got a lot of stuff going on with it in terms of the doors opening up and the ladder features and the water accessory, the little fire bits, the ladders that fold out back here. There's really a lot going on. So I'm going to give alt mode to X-Transbots. All right, next we'll talk about the cost on these two figures. And the retail cost on Inferno, way back when it came out, $140. Pretty expensive figure at the time. The Dante figure retails for $120. I was really shocked to remember that the price difference here, that Inferno is actually more. But we're going to give cost over to X-Transbots. The final factor here is the members' choice category, where I ask my members which one they prefer in terms of looks. No other factors, just what do they prefer. And you can see the X-Transbots actually won that choice. It was pretty close, or at least it was close when I looked at him film this review. It might have changed since the time I produced this video and took the screenshot, but still pretty close. But either way, X-Transbots is going to take the members' choice category. So final thoughts on the comparison. You can see the score there. And I'm actually kind of surprised. I thought the Takara was going to sweep up here in this comparison, but X-Transbots did actually pretty good. Now, the thing about the Takara is the engineering really is just impressive. The fact that they're able to get the ladder compressed down, hidden away. It's a very clean robot, and it just works. But that's also one of the faults of it, is it's so clean and it's got so little detail that it almost kind of looked boring in the vehicle mode. The X-Transbots just is a little more interesting to look at, especially in the vehicle mode, but also in the robot mode. There's a lot more interesting stuff. So if you prefer a cleaner, Toon accurate to the T type of robot, then the Takara is the one for you. If you prefer something that's sort of in the middle, it's got that Toon look, but it's got some details that differ from the cartoon and just kind of its own look. The other thing is this one's a little bigger, so let me just bring in, and I didn't mention that, I don't have size or scale as a category in my verses, but you can see this one actually is much taller. It's still shorter than Optimus, but it is taller than the X-Transbots, or than the Takara Tomy. So that's something to consider too, is do you want a taller Inferno in your collection? If you do, then this is the one. If you want a shorter one, then this is the one to go. I really like them both. Honestly, I'm not sure which one I'm going to keep. It's something about this one still is amazing to me that they were able to do that. So I don't know. It's going to be a tough choice. I might end up keeping both. But hopefully I helped you decide for your collection. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.